And then Gal Gadot has now found herself in the midst of a controversy, getting a ton of backlash right now. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions, and all of it this time stemming from a film that's scheduled to screen in New York and Los Angeles at some point this week, with a film called Bearing Witness. And according to The Hollywood Reporter, it's a 43-minute montage assembled by the Israeli Defense Forces of graphic footage from the terrorist attack carried out by Hamas on October 7th. And with that, The Wrap reporting that much of the footage was filmed by Hamas and includes incredibly violent moments, including murders, beheadings, and rapes of
For me, the worst moment was two little boys and their dad running in their pants to a shelter, and then a Hamas gunman throwing in a grenade. Their father is killed. They are injured. You see them traumatized. You see them sobbing, asking why they're still alive. And then a Hamas gunman callously takes a bottle of Coke from the fridge in front of them while they sob and wail. Hideous to watch, and will stay with me for the rest of my life. No question about that. You see terrified partygoers hiding in some sort of container, and then many grievously injured and presumably killed after a grenade is thrown in. A group of unarmed soldiers, female soldiers, are shot dead while hiding in barracks, even if they're soldiers, as the Geneva Convention states. Killing or wounding a combatant who, having laid down his arms or having no longer means of defence, has surrendered at discretion, is a war crime. As I've said, Hamas, I keep saying, committed terrible crimes. Some high-profile claims are not substantiated by this footage. We were told that there was a large-scale beheading, including the beheading of 40 babies. Now, in the footage we see, a dead soldier is beheaded, grim enough. I looked away, couldn't watch that. But not the same as beheading as a form of execution. The other, obviously deeply unpleasant exception is an unsuccessful attempt to behead a dying Thai migrant worker with a garden implement. Again, hideous to watch. If living people were beheaded, otherwise, we are not shown that in any of the video footage. If there was torture too, there's no evidence given for it on camera. Now, if there was rape and sexual violence committed, we don't see this on the footage either. Now, a warning here for deeply distressing description, but a clip of an Israeli woman inspecting a badly burned woman's corpse to see if she was a relative. She had no underwear. This has been offered as evidence of rape, but that's not what you would consider conclusive evidence. We don't see children being killed. Hamas don't kill those two poor little boys, for example, certainly not on camera, and I imagine we would have been told if they had been killed. Now, I am aware of someone at the screening who claims we did see children being killed. This surprised me because the one thing I would definitely remember is the killing of a child. So when I asked them, they said there was footage of Hamas terrorists screaming at a young girl of around 10 years old. She was hiding under a cupboard or perhaps a table, and then they shot her. That wasn't my recollection. I asked Michael Walker, he couldn't recall that either. So I messaged a US journalist who watched the same screening across the Atlantic, and they said they couldn't recall this either. That beforehand, the IDF spokesperson explicitly said they would not see children being murdered. And then adds that there was a scene where someone hides under in a room and is found, but it's not clear how old they were or whether they died because there's a lot of shadow and it's hard to work out what's happening. That's how they recollected it. Now, we see photos of bodies of children with their faces blurred. Again, horrible enough to see. If they had been intentionally targeted by Hamas, that's not filmed. You do see, for example, on the other hand, a family dog being shot dead. Now, again, this isn't to say that none of this happened. It's just not in the footage which has been provided by the Israeli authorities. Now, maybe Hamas and other fighters didn't film such atrocities on their GoPros or didn't release that footage. Okay, but do also remember that the footage includes extensive CCTV and car dashcam video footage, for example. Now, the disorderly nature of the attack is underlined. At the Nova Music Festival, you see defenseless revelers targeted, while some Hamas gunmen urge bullets to be saved for killing soldiers. One terrified reveler in a car is asked, "Are you a soldier?" So there's clearly some distinction being made between civilians and soldiers in the footage, the selected by Israel of the thousands of hours of footage which we don't see. Now, how much you have that distinction between civilians and soldiers by Hamas, well, we can't therefore ascertain what the overall picture was. Now, my big question centers on what we are told is intercepted Hamas communications, which are spliced throughout the footage. And, we are, in one case, told that a Hamas terrorist is ringing his parents on a victim's phone, and that this conversation is recorded by a call recorder on the phone. Now, these are by far the most sadistic conversations that you will hear in the footage. We hear Hamas fighters ordered to behead people and play football with their heads, while the recorded phone conversation has someone bragging of killing 10 Jews on their victim's phone. They say 10 Jews on their victim's phone, and then saying to look at WhatsApp to see the images, while you can hear his mother and father rejoicing in the background. Now, to be clear, that level of sadism is not reflected by the conversations you hear on the video. That audio should be verified. In this conflict, Israel has released audio of supposed intercepted communications whose veracity has been challenged by experts. Now, that there is no reason not to release audio to independent experts, because the privacy of victims is not compromised in that audio footage we hear. That is not to say that we don't see and hear very clear and hideous sadism, like calling dead civilians dogs, asking terrified and injured hostages as they're driven away for a selfie, general kind of rejoicing and ecstatic reactions, I suppose. As I'm sure you'll know, bodies dragged through streets and stamped on and spat at. I think those have been widely distributed in the public domain. Now, as I say, Hamas, all the members belonging to all the groups, because it wasn't just Hamas who came over the border.
Jewish people. Now, as far as the exact times and locations of the screenings, those haven't been made public for security reasons, but a handful of members from the press and others in the film industry have been privately invited. With all this coming after a small group of international journalists apparently already saw it a couple of weeks ago, per the Daily Beast, during that screening, some viewers burst into tears and had to leave the theater while seeing the graphic footage. Also, as far as why it's being slowly rolled out to small audiences, you had the Rap writing. For Israeli leaders, the primary motivation to share the footage is to respond to international criticism of its military's actions in the Gaza Strip since October 7th, and continuing to say the 140.9 square mile region is currently experiencing a massive humanitarian crisis that has drawn condemnation from world leaders and citizens alike. Also with this, Oscar-winning Israeli filmmaker Guy Nativ has been leading these screenings, and according to I-24 News, he said Gal Gadot actually made these screenings possible as well. Which brings us to why there's been a lot of backlash landing on her specifically, because while some think this footage should be seen, others argue that it's actually just propaganda the IDF is using to justify its attacks in Gaza. With those criticizing Gal saying things like, she may have played a superhero, but she's nothing more than a propagandist and a genocide enabler, as well as everybody who speaks out on behalf of Palestine gets fired or blacklisted. Meanwhile, the likes of Gal Gadot and Brett Gelman get to freely antagonize and distribute propaganda on behalf of a genocidal settler colony. Sensible country. And in the midst of all that, you even had the likes of Mia Khalifa condemning her writing. I've been trying to tell you, along with an old headline where she called Gal Gadot Genocide Barbie. We've also seen some questioning if it's really an accurate and full representation of what's going on. Why would the IDF not release it to the public? Some saying things like, so instead of just handing over the irrefutable proof of atrocities to journalists or news human rights orgs, they are holding private screenings with hand-picked audiences. Strange. If you're going on a propaganda offensive, you should get someone who can act. But with all that said, as the situation develops and we're seeing more and more reactions still coming through, I'd of course love to know your thoughts here. And then, there's always a lot.
All right, so we have borne witness to the ridiculous and debunked hospital command headquarters. The video of this massive complex under Shifa Hospital that was built in 1946 or 47, before the at least I remember. Oh, Shifa Hospital. 1946. I was right. Yeah, it's pretty traumatic these days about the news. It kind of burns into your mind. Yeah, we know it was fake. We've all seen the calendar being described as a hostage guardian list by this spokesperson who, the Hasbara is just unreal. And it's just feeding, like, my worry is that this hysteria this this is I'm sorry for calling it hysteria. This torrent of abysmal propaganda by a clueless right-wing Israeli government and spokespeople and diplomats, and the messianic bile that's vomited from them, and the cleanse Israel so the Messiah comes, is a Christian Zionist more than a Israeli Zionist. It's way more Christian ultra-right Zionist than you want. It's a perfect anti-Semitism thing. Just toss all the Jews to Israel, get rid of them, and bring about the rapture. And so it's horrific. It's incredibly hard to watch, but I believe for the fairness of reporting, you absolutely have to not turn your eyes from this. I mean, I read something. It's hard though. I mean, Jesus, it's hard. I read something from Starhawk back in 2008, I believe, when she talked about the settler compounds in the West Bank don't have treatment for the sewage. They just spill it out onto the lands of the Palestinians around them. I had to stop reading it. It was just... I'll go back and read the full article at some point, but it's, something that horrific you just learn for the first time is just, you have to stop and process and come back later and start over again and continue where you left off. And after it, the horror, and the fact that settlers spit and throw garbage at Holocaust survivors. It's not explained the narrative of these settlers, these illegal settlers, doing this to the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust. It's like, what state does your mind go to that you think this is okay to normalize? It's just, how? So, yeah, it's going to backfire in the Israelis. It's gone too far. This was a godsend to Netanyahu, this October 7th atrocity by Hamas and other militant groups. War crimes, terrorism, call it what you will. It was horrific, and these people need to be brought to justice who committed these atrocities. You can't just kidnap people, for Christ's sake. You can't murder people, civilians. It just shouldn't be a thing. But as we see, how can the response from the West only be to people like us? Do you condemn Hamas, as the satirist mocks them for? It's like, no, we cannot condemn them. What you are doing is horrific, and what they did on October 7th no way excuses any of your behavior, especially murdering your own hostages in cold blood, probably out of rage that one of your commanders was ambushed when he claimed a great victory. And Jesus. So yeah, it's just, you brought this on yourself out of a want for it to provoke a response, and then act like the victim, like the only victim in the entire world. And the righteousness of it is just, I think, opening people up to the possibility that our mainstream media uses these tactics to dehumanize anybody they feel like and cancel culture them. And it's not the woke people who are the offending cancel culture people. It's the mainstream media and the ultra-right who provoke a response and then act the victim, like the only victim. And the dehumanized people aren't even considered, oh, it's like collateral damage or, human shields. That Israel has been used, the Zionists have been using for decades as an excuse to literally, and I quote them, mow the grass. So, yeah, and I'll leave it there. What I would like to do in the future is go through all the videos I've posted on Facebook and clip out all the important key points that I've learned over these past 2 months, that I've unlearned over these past 2 months, of the propaganda that I've been force-fed since I was a baby about, a land for people without a land, and a people for land without people, or from the river to the sea, Israel will have its, like, that's Likud founding documents, that they have, like, that's it from their Bible, right? It's the greater Israel solution. It's not one, like Noam Chomsky says, it's not one state solution. It's not two state solution. We are actually living in a greater Israel solution, the third one. He doesn't say final solution, but we're looking at, and Merry Christmas, by the way, Christmas Day, the day a refugee from Nazareth who was forced south by the king of Hebron, who murdered thousands of babies for fear of the Messiah. And he was born in a manger because there was no place for the pregnant woman forced south to give birth. And I'm sure you've heard it. If you haven't, the Palestinian Christian pastor said that. It's amazing. We are seeing that Jesus's nativity is describing Gaza literally. So it's anyways, yeah, I'd like to splice all together the stuff I've learned over the last 2 months from all those clips and just kind of make a compilation and just play it all out. And a Happy New Year.